All right. Just a few announcements before we get started. Welcome, first of all, to the second. That's right, second tasting of the sherry box. We are tasting this guy right here. It's a 500 milliliter bottle. You don't see 500 milliliter very often, but you will see it quite a bit in a fortified wine territory. But it's a Bodega Hidalgo Napoleon Amontillado is what we're tasting today. Clearly, just as last week, this is a non-vintage. That's why there's no vintage on here, but that's what we got. Just a few announcements before we get started. I don't have a whole lot. This is what I was supposed to go out yesterday. So technically, I was going to shut off all the orders for Case Club at noon today. It's always on the Thursday after the Case Club goes live at noon is when I cut off the Case Club. But since yesterday happened and I didn't get to give you guys a final warning, if you guys want to put in, if anybody's out there still thinking that they wanted to put in Case Club but they missed the window, I'll give you one more day. So I'll have you till tomorrow at noon if you guys want to put in that order. So let me know. But that's pretty much all the announcement I got. So, yeah, I'm sure you don't have any questions about that. Cool. Then let's get into the wine. For those of you who are just learning this down, we're tasting this 500 milliliter Bodegas Hidalgo Napoleon Amontillado is what we're tasting today. All right, let's start with the map. So we always do. Here we go. Here's a map of Spain. Should look pretty familiar. I saw this last week, and many of you have seen this many, many times. So where we are is all the way in the south. This purple region right here, the southern tip, Andalusia is where we are. That's where Seville or Sevilla is, in case you're wondering, you're not familiar with the Spanish geography. But yeah, so this is where we are. Obviously, it covers a large area, right? It goes all the way from the western area here, all the way to the Montilla Morelos on the right, around Malaga. But where we are really interested this week or this month is right here. The Sherry Triangle, or Marco de Jerez, is what we are interested in, all centered around the town of Jerez. We talked about this last week as well. So there are different kind of producing communes in sherry in Jerez area. So all these different areas are actually points of production, but really the three cities that are the kind of center of it now, a center of the Sherry Triangle, hence the name is Sherry Triangle. These are these three towns: Jerez, Sanlúcar de Barrameda, and Puerto Santa Maria for short. Where we are this week is right here, back in Sanlúcar de Barrameda. This is where we were last week as well with a manzanilla, which is a fino style sherry made from Sanlúcar de Barrameda. That's called manzanilla. And then the fino style sherry that's made in Jerez or Santa Maria, which we call fino or Jerez. Stylistically, Sanlúcar de Barrameda, as you can see, is right by the ocean. There's a lot, it's way more humid. I mean, this whole region, Andalusia, is really, really sunny and really, really hot. But Sanlúcar de Barrameda, particularly being right next to the ocean, there's this huge Atlantic and the oceanic influence here. So a lot of salt sea breeze coming in here, a lot of humidity. So the wines that are aging here tend to get the kind of salty tang. It is a little bit lighter. It's more compared to the more inland wines that come from Jerez or Santa Maria, but particularly compared to Jerez, which is much more inland. So this is much hotter, much more continental climate here. And the wines from Jerez just tend to be a bit more burly, a little bit more muscular, a little more body, a little more oxidized, and all of that. And as you can see on this map, these kind of white parts that are drawn here, this is what outlines the famous soil of sherry, which is Albariza soil, which is this really chalky, rich white soil. By the way, this is what Sanlúcar looks like. Not very, doesn't look very remarkable in any way, but yeah, this is actually what the town of San Lucar looks like. And then this is what Albanita soil looks like. So really, as you can see, very, very high content of chalk, which is what makes it really white like that. You can even see it on the side, and these are vines that are growing on top, which causes what it does is that basically when it rains, it stores all that water, it pours and it pours down and holds on, retains all the water. So on the surface level, when it's really hot, even though it dries off all of it, down below it's holding off all that water. So the basically vine roots have to travel deep down into the earth, kind of get to that water, get to the nutrients and all the things it needs to survive. And that's what, and when the vines have to struggle like that, it basically increases the concentration of the grapes or the wine, and then consequently wines. And essentially, that's what's good for a quality wine. So without this soil, essentially, it would be impossible to grow these grapes essentially in this really hot region of Andalusia. This Albariza soil is really what allows it to be, allows a quality viticulture that exists here. Before we get to the Sherry solar system and all of that, we'll talk about that in a second. But just wanted to give you a quick little history of Sherry. We're going to touch upon that last week. But this whole region of, I mean, all of Spain, pretty much all of Western Europe, but, you know, and Sherry is no different. Really, where this viticulture started are the Romans. So Romans brought viticulture here. You know, viticulture is general. The whole Phoenicians were the ones who brought it across, and the ancient Greeks. And then afterwards, the Romans who really took it from that and then took it over and spread it across the Western Europe as we know it. So all the kind of quote unquote old country or old world wines that we know, Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, all these regions were essentially all propagated and all planted and farmed by Romans to begin with. And Andalusia is no different. But the way we know sherry now, the modern day sherry, is a little bit different story. But I mean, the history of here is really, really long. It goes way back. So sherry's rise and domination here is a kind of an interesting story. You can dive much deeper, very deep into that story if you guys are going to get into it. But in short, it was really how the modern day sherry came about is because of the Brits. And it's the same thing with a port. What became really popular and became more global was because the British influence. So because the war that they had with France back in 1400s, Brits essentially lost access to their favorite wine region, which was Bordeaux. Bordeaux used to be one of the main regions that the Brits used to go to. And then the whole reason why also, and we talked about this during our Rioja month, and how the Rioja region really grew and the use of the barrels and all of that really came from because the Brits lost access to the Bordeaux, and then the Bordeaux is the first kind of major region from Rioja if you're going into France, by the way. So a lot of train came down, and then the commerce was established between the two, and then they were able to get the wines from Rioja. And the same idea here in Andalusia. So they lost access to Bordeaux because of the war, and so they really turned their thirst to kind of next areas all around. And Rioja was one of them, but Andalusia, particularly Sanlúcar de Barrameda, which is the port town because it's right next to water, where sherry was being produced, and that's where they set their eyes. So British interest and then basically investment in the sherry persists there for over 100 years, and they're the ones who really built out a lot of structures. So if you ever go to Sherry or Jerez, or if you go to Porto, and then if you look at these houses, there's a lot of British names in there, like Sandman. I mean, obviously there's a Spanish name there too, like the Bodegas Hidalgo, which is what we're facing today. But there's a lot of British names on these old historical names. Is because they were the first one to get there to really invest major money into the region for 100 years. And then, so they really worked on here, and then until later on, they really developed flavor or taste for Porto, and then their interest really changed from sherry to Porto, and then they started importing a lot of port back into Britain. And that's kind of how we all got started. And then initially, this whole fortification and solar system, which is what we're about to talk about in a second, the sherry, because of it was getting so popular all of a sudden because of all this external demand from the Brits, sherry started piling up in Andalusia, which led to a lot of standard solar aging system to kind of avoid spoilage. So it was out of the necessity and also a way for it to survive the voyage from here back to Britain. They started fortifying the wines. And eventually, the Andalusia producers began fortifying sherry to kind of compete with port. And then 3 centuries later, we have an entire region basically defined by those kind of market pressures and the production methods that were developed during that time. So, yeah, when you're thinking about how did sherry develop, how did these people get to like fortifying their wines and the whole Solera aging system, which is quite unique to the area, like that. This is how it all developed. It's all because of British influence here, and then their need, basically market need to get those wines to survive the voyage, and then basically to have a longer shelf life. So that's, and then now we're still essentially the whole region is defined by that style. So, yay! Thanks to the Brits, we get to taste some incredible wines. Anyways, all right, let's get into Solera. But before we get into Solera, I wanted to just. I feel like last week I tried to go in kind of too in depth on the kind of technical side of sherry making. So I feel like I lost a lot of it. So I kind of wanted to go over just a few key points that I want you to remember from last week. So first and foremost, let's start with what is sherry. So if you're talking about sherry, this is what we're talking about all month. Essentially, sherry is a fortified wine made from Palomino fino, it's a type of grape, from the Jerez region, which is all right here, but particularly around the Marco de Jerez, which is the sherry triangle that exists right here. So sherry, and also in 60 seconds. So normal wine, essentially, you take the grapes, you ferment it, and then you bottle it, or age it and you bottle it. That's what you got. But with sherry, what happens is that fortification and aging is what makes sherry particularly unique. So you take the grapes, you ferment it just like you make the regular wine, and then you fortify it, meaning you take the unaged grape brandy and then you pour it into the wine to raise the alcohol level. And then you put it in a giant warehouse, and then it develops this kind of weird yeast blanket called floor, which you saw. Do I have a picture of that? No. I don't have it this week, but you saw it last week, which it develops on the top of the layer of the wine. And then from there, it goes into a fractional blending system or aging system called Solera, which we'll go over in a second. And then there's a decades of waiting and aging, and then you bottle it and you call it out. So that's what sherry is in general, in a very short kind of nutshell. But wow. The single most important thing to understand about sherry is this is what I want you to get is two things. And then next week we're going to start getting to the second part. But so you make the base wine, you fortify it up to 14.5%, and then you're developing the phenol by aging it under the blanket of yeast called floor, right? So and then at that point it basically divides into two paths. There's a team phenol, which is that way, is also called biological aging. So wine is protected from oxygen by that layer of yeast called floor. So it is aging under that floor the entire time without the exposure to oxygen. So that's phenol route. And then the second path for the sherry is team oloroso. So oloroso in Spanish literally means oxidized. So what it means is that it completely skips that development of floor, and it is aged fully oxidatively exposed to oxygen. So those are kind of two paths that sherry can go on. So one is a phenol path, the other is oloroso path. We tasted manzanilla, which is a phenol wine, which means it was aged under floor, but it has to be made in Sanlúcar. So that's what we tasted last week. And next week, we're going to taste oloroso, which is it never touched floor. It had basically aged under, exposed to oxygen the whole time. So those are two paths. And what we are tasting today is something in between. It's called Amontillado. So it starts the life as phenol. So on the very top, in the solar system, the sobre tabla, this is where the phenol wines exist up top, right? The It starts with phenol, so it develops. It basically we ferment it, we fortify it up to 14.5%, 14.5 to 15.5%, and then the floor develops. So now it's aging without the oxygen under the floor. But at some point, they look at these casks, different casks in the silver tabla, and then they see that some of them have developed a little bit more color. They have developed a little bit more nuttier, kind of a deeper, richer kind of a quality to it, because not every cask is going to be the same, right? And I actually have a guess or some guess that the manzanilla that we tasted last week, and if you remember, I kept saying this tastes a little bit more like Amontillado than it does true phenol. And I have a feeling that this was probably one of those barrels that kind of developed a little bit darker and richer and nuttier, but they didn't develop that into Amontillado. They sold that as phenol. But anyways, some of these casks that kind of gets a little bit darker, that comes out a little bit nuttier and deeper, they decide to basically finish the aging by killing off the floor. So now it finishes the aging oxidatively. So, right? So most shares go one path or the other. Phenol without any oxygen, oloroso with fully oxidatively. And Amontillado starts it off as a phenol under floor. And then at some point, they decide these certain casks, we're going to make it into Amontillado. So they actually fortify it up to 17.5% from the 14.5%. And at that ABV, the ABV is too high for the floor to survive. So floor dies off. And then the wine that was aging under floor is now being aged fully oxidatively. And that's what Amontillado is. So, and Amontillado is that kind of that baby that splits the difference between phenol and oloroso. It's not as nutty, deep caramel, toffee, that kind of character as an oloroso. But it's not as delicate and salty and tangy as a phenol, a green almondy as a phenol. It's somewhere in between. It kind of has that little bit of phenol, a little bit of oloroso, and to me, this is my favorite style of sherry because it kind of has a little bit of the both worlds. I mean, I like them all, but particularly if I had to choose one of them to drink, I would probably choose Amontillado, just because also pairing-wise, this is really fun wine to play with because it kind of works with the food that you can work with phenol, but it also works with food that kind of work with oloroso. It kind of has a little bit of both. It's basically what we have here. And to talk about the Solera system, I thought this would be fun. And this is actually one of the four brothers who, sorry, this is not it. Never mind. Anyways, so that's how that goes. And then this Solera system is essentially how it works is whenever you bottle the wine, you pull it from the very last kind of a criadera is what it's called. Each layer is called criadera. You pull it from the very last one, and then whatever the room it leaves behind, it gets replaced from the wine above, and then the room that gets behind, it gets filled up back up with the wines that are above that, younger than that, and then until it goes up to the top where that year's vintage, that year's wine is what goes into that the last criadera. So if you think about it, when you get to the very last one, and some of these wineries, some of the old wineries, particularly like Hidalgo, they have Solera that's dating back hundreds of years. They have levels that are going up to like 14, 16 levels. So what we are talking about is some of these wines that are left in the very last Solera where you pull, when you do the saka, and when you bottle it from, there's some wines in there that are potentially 100 years old. Obviously it is a fraction of what is in there, And that's why the term fractional blending or fractional aging comes from, because everything is a little bit fractional. There's a little bit of something being added from the year before, but the oldest part is still left in there. So it's not all of it, but the fractional, that's why sherry is always non-vintage, as well as the term fractional blending comes from. It's kind of like if you ever baked sourdough, it's kind of like the sourdough baking. You're always adding new stuff on top, but the main ingredient, there's some flour from the very first time you made that dough starter is still in there, right? So, there's like a sourdough starter that has, dates back to your like great grandmothers, even older than that, because you keep feeding it. And it's kind of the same idea. There's some portion of it, some fractional portion of the oldest wine that you've ever bottled, you've ever made, is in the final blend that you put into a bottle. This is what you got. Cool. Any questions about any of that? I try to simplify it as much as I can. I don't know if I'm making much sense or if this is coming off clear, but do you guys have any questions about Solera or what sherry is and difference between two paths and all
I
that?
have. Wouldn't the older wine already add the more alcohol?
Say that one more time.
Well, the older wine, the oldest wine, still has the most alcohol, right? And that's
What
going
do you
to
mean, most alcohol?
affect the. That's going to. It's when does the final alcohol content arrive?
So they all go in separate paths. So if you're making manzanilla or fino, right, you're fortifying up to 14.5%. And then that's what it, so basically, first of all, fino and oloroso are two completely different soleras. They're not blended in the same. So they split it off from the very beginning. There's one solera for fino sherries. There's one solera for oloroso sherries. So let's begin there. Now, with the fino part, you start off the fino, which is 14.5%, the very youngest one. So 14.5%, and then it develops that darker, nuttier. Some casks develop that, and what they do is they take those casks out of the solera, and then they build their own solera, and then they fortify it up to 17.5%. So essentially, you have fino, Amontillado, and Oloroso all aging in their own separate kind of soleras. And to your point of, because vintage to vintage, the fortification level could change. Some year they could fortify it up to 17.5%. Some year they could go up to 18.5%. So there may be a little slight difference, but it's all going to be about the same. Whenever you get to basically Amontillado, it's going to be at least 17.5%, because by legally law, you have to get it up to 17.5%. There's like a range. I can't remember the top range. I think 17.5 to 19.5%. Is a range for Amontillado, so it's always going to fall within that. But each year to year, Criadera to Criadera, there could be a slight difference. Does that answer your question, Phil? Okay. Any other questions? Cool. Excellent. Then let's talk about who makes this one. All right. So I could not really find much information about each brothers, but Bodegas Hidalgo, before I play the video, I'm going to play you guys a video. But Bodegas Hidalgo La Gitana is the name of the winery. It's founded by Jose Hidalgo in 1792 during the reign of Charles IV, making it the fourth oldest winery in all of Spain. And second, that is the family owned. So it's one of the oldest wineries in all of Spain. We're talking about essentially history of Spain in a bottle. And if you can imagine, I don't know their La Solera still has some of the wines from the initial beginning, but I mean, you can imagine when you're dealing with families of this old, and this is part of the reason why their wines are so deep and complex and so layered, because their Solera just goes so deep. They've been making wines for so long. So there's a fractional portion of that last blending has some of these wines from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It's kind of like champagne, right? Like champagne, you have to reserve some of that wine each vintage to make the non-vintage. And then the houses that have been around for a long time have these reserve wines that go so far back. And and they have the volume to add so much more. And then that's why there's a lot of complexity. And it's the same thing with the sherry. So these kind of old houses really, really have kind of an upper hand in terms of producing sherry that are much more complex and delicious. It is now run by the 8th generation Hidalgo brothers, Luis, Antonio, Juan, and Fermin Hidalgo. They actually, I was able to find at least one brother, two brothers pictures. So this is Antonio Hidalgo, is the oldest one. He's the one who actually, so Hidalgo is, they actually set up their own import company in Miami, Florida, to bring all their family wines into US and distribute it in the US themselves. And then he's the one who's actually in US, established that import company, and then he's distributing it in here. And then the rest of brothers, Luis, Juan, and Fermin, are back in Spain at the family estate, kind of running the day-to-day operations there. So those four brothers, who are 8th generation Hidalgo brothers, are the ones who are running the winery, and they now export to more than 40 different countries, which is a pretty remarkable thing, that considering that sherry is a category as a whole, is a kind of diminishing category, but the fact that they're still exporting to that many countries and then doing well enough to actually establish their own import and distribution company in the States is a pretty remarkable thing. It is definitely one of the most well-known and respected sherry producers in the world. And what they're best known for, and it's not what we are having, is La Gitana, which just means the gypsy in Spanish. It's one of the most iconic reference point manzanilla. So if you ever want to taste what manzanilla is supposed to taste like, you should get one of those bottles. And okay, I can put that on Case Club as well. I purposely did not put it on here because I mean all of them. I honestly thought about perhaps doing all three, maybe all four bottles of sherry this month solely with Hidalgo, and just to go through a different style, because I liked all of them, but particularly Amontillado really spoke to me. So I decided to feature the Amontillado this month in the box. But their manzanilla, which is their pheno style sherry, is really what they're known for, and it is pretty phenomenal. But anyways, I wanted to show you this video instead of me just talking all about it. There's not a whole lot of talking in it, but this is essentially, sorry, 1 second. So this is a video done by Jamie Good. I don't know if you guys heard of Jamie Good, but he's a British wine professional. If you ever wanted to explore wine faults, like a different fault in wine, he wrote one of the best books. I mean, he's a very well-respected, well-known wine critic and wine writer, but his book on wine faults is, in my opinion, one of its own. Like it's on his own category. Not many people write books about faults, wine faults, but he's one of them. So if you want to check it out, but I found this video and I thought it gave a pretty decent kind of overview of the region, as well as Hidalgo Gitana, just kind of what it looks like. It's not a deep dive, that is not a huge of talking, but anyways, here we go.
Hello, Jamie Good here. I'm in the vineyards of sherry. I'm actually in Hidalgo La Gitana's La Cuadrado vineyard. It's one of their best vineyards, and the grapes are on the vine. They're ready to be picked. Harvest starts for them today. But in the region, harvest started on 29th of July, making it the earliest harvest on record. Although today it's mercifully a bit cooler and a bit overcast, ideal conditions for picking grapes.
is this plant. You don't see this anywhere else in the region.
What do we have here?
La Gitana en Rama Employees Cask.
Fantastic. So this is
The better, among the good, the better. Well, this is our cooperage. It's not big, it's not high-tech, it's traditional.
Hygienic, sorry, one and four, please.
Very few.
Oh, what a very few, sorry.
And for example,
Why is it important to have your own breakfast? Because you don't
está en la playa y lo único que we try to repair it here.
Okay.
Because if I have a leak here and I cannot repair it here, I have to first take out the wine of these two, take out the wine of those three, take out the wine of those four, and then take out the cask. They can repair at least one, usually two casks. And they got me 80 euros. So we could increase with our own figure, and suddenly we La Gitana Vintage 2017 and 45. Here you go.
The singular. You just need to think.
Of man or people, interaction of people and place and surroundings, and it's classic, you know.
Some of them are really cheap as well. What's cheap?
Yes, I know, but is wanting it to promote here, is that the ultimate objective? No, I think it's wanting it to come out and
I've tried various points over my life.
Pretty cool, right? I don't know if you guys find that as cool as I did, but I think it's a pretty good overview of the winery and just kind of what it looks like. You saw one of the brothers, Furman, there. So again, I could only find Antonio and Furman, their pictures. I could not find Jose or Luis's pictures, but that's what we got. Also, those three wines that you saw at the end, unfortified sherry wines, those are kind of like the latest craze coming out of Jerez. A lot of people are kind of trying to go back to before the sherry became sherry, what the wines from that region must have tasted like before the fortification came along. So a lot of this is happening. We're gonna taste something very similar to that. That's the fourth bottle of this month, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But it's a kind of the latest what all the hip kids are drinking these days, the unfortified sherry. Anyways, all right. So what is this wine? As you saw in the video, it's 100% Palomino Fino. It starts as a premium Manzanilla de La Gitana. So it ages under the floor for about 5 years. Then casks that develop a deeper, kind of richer, nuttier character that I was telling you about, they're selected and then pulled out of Solara and then put into their start their own Solara for to become Amontillado. The wine is fortified to 17.5%, which kills off floor. Then it goes into a oxidative aging period. So transferred to a separate Solara system where it undergoes purely oxidative aging in 150-year-old American oak cask, which is what you saw there in their old cooperage, for an additional 7 years. So it starts off 5 years as a Manzanilla, and then it finishes off additional 7 years as an Oloroso, and then that's what Amontillado is. It's got part of aging as a Fino, part of aging as an Oloroso. So total aging, approximately 12 years in total fractional aging through Solara. And then the fun fact about the name, the Napoleon, dates back to the Peninsular War in the early 19th century. Prior and during the French occupation of Spain, Bodegas Hidalgo cleverly sold wines to French officers under the name of their commander, Napoleon. So Bonaparte's likeness still graces the label today. So it's basically why it's named Napoleon, in case you're wondering why the Spanish sherry, arguably one of the most kind of rigid, traditionally rigid and conservative area, have a French name on the, or a French general's name on the battle. That's why. All right. Any questions about any of that before we get into tasting it? Go. Let's taste the wine. Instead of usually, I promised last week that I would go for Annie and Sam, that I was going to go through and kind of explain how we taste through it. And usually I would just go through the whole thing, but instead we're going to blend it. So we're going to have each person pick the section, but before you make your call, I'm going to explain how to kind of what it is and what we're doing, what we're looking for, and then we'll have you do it. So anyways, who wants to take the appearance?
I do.
Yeah, you do.
Here I am. Although I feel like I don't remember how to do this with sherry.
It's no different than regular wine. Some little difference here and there when we get to alcohol, but yeah, you'll be fine.
Oh, wow. Do we have like a fancy gray box here now?
What's
We're
it?
getting high tech. Oh, I see. There's like a gray box. Is that just my screen?
Gray
Get your-
box.
Oh, on my screen it looks like you've blocked off the under the appearance so that we can only see part of it. Maybe it's just my screen is messed up. Okay, the wine is clear.
Yeah, so sorry, Allison. So I'm gonna kind of explain what
Oh,
it is,
sorry.
and then no, all good. And then
I'm enthusiastic. I just can't wait to do
all
it.
good. And Sam and Annie will get you through it. So, all right, let me explain this thing real quick. So, what the grid is, what a tasting through the grid is. So, this is the grid. You already saw this last week, but it's essentially the way that us wine professionals, whether you are sommelier or wine writer, wine critic, anyways, any training that you go through, you are essentially, the part of testing for that is a blind tasting. And in order to guess, or in order to come to an educated guess on what is it in your glass, you have to taste and deduce, kind of go through a deductive tasting. And that system of going through the tasting is called the grid. And it's divided into 4 different sections. And first is appearance, what the wine looks like; nose, what the wine smells like; palate, what the wine tastes like; and then conclusion is where you take all the sensory information that you've gathered, and then you you think about the wine and make some calls. In this case, at this level, we use WCT, Wine and Spirit Education Trust, level 3 grid. And at this level, what we're going to call it is a quality level, how good the wine is, and then whether we should age the wine. There's a level 4, obviously level 2 and 1 as well. We use level 3 grid here. There's also another body of a wine certification body called Court of Master Sommeliers. Those are the people who certify Master Sommelier. This is WCT is a prerequisite for Master of Wine. Both very kind of prestigious titles to have it, as prestigious as the titles you can have in the wine career. But the grid that they use is pretty much about the same. There's a little bit of slight difference, but the idea of it is the same. The 4 different sections: the appearance, nose, palate, and conclusion. And then maybe some of the calls and some of the nomenclature, the vernacular that we use, the words that we use may be a little different, but it's pretty much the same. So we're going to start from the top, which is the appearance. So what you're going to do is you're going to pour yourself like a half a glass of wine is usually good. So half a glass is like 2.5 ounces, 3 ounces or so. You pour yourself wine and you're going to tilt it at a 45-degree angle. And then basically what you're looking at is from the top to bottom, right through the deepest core of the wine. The natural sunlight is the best light to do this under, but obviously, we do this at nighttime, so we don't have that. If you have like a white piece of paper, that's a pretty good thing to have to kind of put it behind the wine. If you don't have that, you can use your hand, but having some sort of kind of like a calibrating color in the back is usually a good thing to do. But anyways, so we're going to look through the ride in the middle, and then we're going to call out clarity, intensity, color, and any other things that we see. So Allison, without further ado, would you give us your call on clarity?
Yeah. I would call this clear. Right now,
yeah, I don't see any haziness. I don't see any opaque thing going through. I'm going to call this clear as well. Intensity.
I think I'm going to call it medium.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got some color. So
should I say it's deep?
I would go as far as deep on this one. I'll call this about medium, in my opinion. Like deep is, so also it's a little bit different between white wine and a red wine. When it's a red wine, when you tilt it over, pale is like if you see through the core and you can read everything that's behind it, that's pale. Medium is kind of like you can make out some letters, but you cannot really have to look through it to kind of like read the whole sentence. That's medium. Deep is obviously you can't see anything. White obviously is a little bit different because you're pretty much going to be able to see through it all unless the wine is hazy. So you're really looking at just kind of amount of color that's in the wine. And with this wine, there's definitely some color here, but it's not like super deep. There's definitely wines that are, even the white wines that are so deep that you cannot see through it, especially when it's aged oxidatively like this one. So I'm going to call this about medium color. And would you call out the color for us? Awesome.
I think it's amber.
Yeah, this is getting into that amber territory. Definitely is past gold. Last week we were right in the gold, right? And then now in amber. By the way, these are all wines that are made from Palomino Fino, white grape, but yet they look completely different. So hold on, I want to show you this picture that I wanted to show you. On that note. By the way, this is, I mean, you saw it in the video, but this is what the warehouse looks like. But anyway, this is what I wanted to show you. So look at all these wines, very different colors, right? But these are all, believe it or not, pretty much the same wines. They're all made from the same.
I still see the guy. Am I just going crazy? Did other people
Oh,
also
I see the guide too, and Allison, for what it's worth, I put this in the chat, but I also saw the box over the.
Thank you. I really,
Oh,
it's very validating for me. So oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, I see it. I saw your your cursor going around as if there was wine, but it was just this man's face, and I was confused.
Do you see the glasses now?
Now I see the glasses of wine. They're so pretty. I like them very much.
Perfect. So Believe it or not, these are all white wines. They are all made from white grapes, or grapes that
Wow.
are made to use white wine. All the difference between these is level of aging, level of oxidative aging that took place. So as the wine ages, like even this one on the very far left, I mean, we are definitely into the brown territory. We haven't had wines that we call brown on this wine club, maybe once, not many times, if not ever. So we're definitely in that territory here. But look at this. I mean, we're definitely kind of an amber, right? And this wine, what we have is a kind of in here. So imagine that. Like, look at this. Look at how clear it is. It develops a little more gold. This looks more like last week's wine, like this wine or this wine. But then now we're entering into this kind of amber territory, and then it just gets darker and darker, more oxidatively aged it goes until it gets to this really deep dark and brown. This is like a Madeira territory. It's like fully oxidatively. And then you will see next week's wines is going to be even darker. Now it's kind of getting into like this territory. And again, it's all because this is what oxygen does to white wine, as well as aging, oxidative aging does. Anyways, I wanted to show you that. So, yep, I will call this amber. And the reason why we call out the color is it usually gives a sign of aging, like you mentioned. All right, let's get back to the grid. You see the grid now?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have any. Oh.
And then any other, let me talk about observations real quick. And all you guys know where this is going. So this is where you're gonna call out like deposits or anything else, bubbles or anything else that you see in the wine, just kind of note it. But I just want to make one point real quick. This legs or tears. In case you're wondering what that is, if you like swirl the wine and then let it kind of stand and sit, you're gonna see these things kind of dripping down on the side of the wine. Those are called legs or tears. And that essentially is what it shows you is the viscosity of the wine, level of glycol that exists in the wine. And it's all function of alcohol and sugar. And later on, we're going to talk about this when we get to palate. There's sweetness that we verify and alcohol that we have to verify. So I personally don't understand why we have to talk about legs or tears, just as an observation, just to take a guess on what's happening with the wine. So to me, this is redundant and it's completely unnecessary. And also on top, it's just having worked on the restaurant floor for so many years, I've had so many people come in and be like, oh my God, look at those gorgeous legs or tears on that wine, that glass. First of all, I don't even know what gorgeous legs or tears on a wine looks like. Does that mean it's just like flowing down very slowly? It's flowing down fast? I'm not sure. But somehow I've heard more than, more than people that I want to admit, but they've all said like, oh my God, this wine must be so good. Those legs are so beautiful. The quality of the wine has nothing to do with the legs or tears. So don't ever be that person who went to a restaurant and say, oh my God, look at those legs. This is so beautiful. It's fucking stupid. You sound like an idiot. So don't do that. So all in all I'm saying is we don't talk about legs and tears here because I think it's stupid. It's redundant. There's no point in talking about it. But this is where you note anything that you see in the wine that you haven't pointed out that's besides the intensity and color. So any other observations, Allison? Hello? Did we lose you? Allison? Maybe we lost it. All right. Let's move on. Who wants to take the news?
I'll do it.
Usually Allison would nominate, but since she dropped off. What's up?
I'll do it.
All right. All right, Phil. Let's do the nose. All right. So nose, now we finally get to smell it. So the very first thing you're going to do is give it a little swirl, just kind of incorporate some oxygen, get all the volatile compounds to be moving around inside the glass. And then you're gonna put your nose on the glass, and then you're gonna take a very kind of a long and slow whiff, or you can take a couple short, quick whiffs. Either one is fine. I tend to be the long, slow kind, but I've seen other people do it other ways. So whatever works to makes you feel like you can get a very good sense of what's coming out of the glass. So give it a whiff.
Okay, this wine is clean. There's no
This wine
fault.
is clean.
Very
Yeah.
clean.
This wine is clean. This wine is sound. The biggest thing what we're looking for is this wine faulty? Is this wine sound or not? The most common fault is called being corked, which is what happens in the wine. Cork itself is not fully sterile, but it can also happen in ambient air. The bacteria from that could be airborne. It could get into the wine. So wines that have a screw cap. I've had screw cap wines that were corked. It happens more than you think it does, but it smells like the wine smells like a wet cardboard, damp basement. Everything is kind of muted. You can't really get a good smell, or all the other fruit, any other characters really gets damped and muted down, and just smells like a wet cardboard. Once you smell it, it's like a matrix moment. Like you will always be able to smell it in the future. So that's the first and foremost what you're looking for. That, but there's other things as well, like volatile acidity. If it gets too high, then it smells like a nail polish. At a small amount, it's kind of sometimes it's like a character of certain wines, like Chianti, Piedmont wines have a lot of some level of volatile acidity running through. Every wine has some level of volatile acidity running through, but when it gets too high, when it gets too it peaks too high, then it's considered a fault. Same thing with the Brettanomyces. It was the particular strain of yeast that makes wine smell and taste like barn, has a flavor and aromas of like barnyard, horse's ass, and things like that. If you ever had like a Brett IPA, which is like a really popular beer style for a while, it has like kind of like a farmyardy kind of a thing going on. Again, at a certain level, on a small level, it can be a character builder, and in some regions like Rhone, Southern Rhone particularly, is even one of the telltale hallmark sign of the wine from that region. But if it gets too high, again, peaks too high, then it's considered fault. So there's a lot of conversation around what is considered wine fault, but it's to me, it's one, first and foremost, it's about winemakers' intention. Like, did they intentionally do this, or did something get fucked up during winemaking? And two, it's a matter of a balance. If something is so high, like volatile acidity or Brett is so high that it's blocking you from interfering with you're experiencing other things, other aromas, I would argue that is a fault. But if it is there to kind of build and give you character, then is it really fault? But some wine purists and traditionalists would say any level of volatile acidity in some wines would be just immediately fault. But again, like I mentioned, in certain regions, in certain parts of the world, it's considered a hallmark sign. So I don't know, is it then it all depends on what style it is, and then isn't it completely subjective? So anyways, so first thing is you smell it to make sure the wine is sound. To me, this wine smells perfectly fine, sound. There's nothing damp or barnyardy or nail polishy or anything like that. So I'm going to call this clean and sound. Next is the intensity, which is give it a swirl. You're going to move the glass towards your nose, and then you're going to stop when you first get a whiff of the wine. So like mine is about here.
Yeah.
I get it like
medium plus.
Yeah, I'm like, this is quite far from the glass, like here, which is, that's like what, 3 inches? So I'm gonna call this at least medium plus. This is going on to pronounced. I mean, very, very expressive. So yeah, medium plus to pronounced is what we got here. Aroma characteristics, primary, secondary, tertiary, which is when you go to the second part. So primary are all the flavors and aromas that happen during the fermentation, the alcoholic fermentation. And so this is pretty much all fruits and flowers and pretty much kind of like fresh ingredients that we think of, but also there's some minerality that feels like rockiness, salinity and things like that, and some spices, herbs, pyrazine, which may smell like a fresh cut grass, and things like that that exist down here. Secondary is what happens when the wine gets aged. So it's a post-fermentation winemaking. So when it gets put on lees, which are dead yeast cells, you get these autolytic flavors, autolysis, which are like things like biscuit, bread, dough, cheese rind, and things like that. This is champagne. I know you guys are champagne fans. Champagne is notorious for these autolytic notes because it spends so much time on the lees. Next, MLF, which is a malolactic fermentation. It's short for malolactic fermentation. Every wine has it's a natural secondary fermentation that happens if you leave the wine at a room temperature. If you chill it down, you will block it. But if you keep it at a room temperature, a little bit higher temperature, automatically, naturally, the malic acid in the wine just naturally converts to lactic acid. So that's called malolactic fermentation. It's a secondary fermentation that happens in wine. Pretty much all 100% of red wines go through malolactic fermentation. White wines, some white wines go through all full malolactic fermentation. Think like that buttery Chardonnay. That's what they say, butter. Partial malolactic fermentation, where they go through a certain percentage, half, and then they block it off. The winemaker will block it off, or no malolactic fermentation whatsoever. So the difference between malic acid and lactic acid. So malic acid, think like green apple, something really sharp. Green apple, yeah, sharp acid. Like if you're thinking about like cimini, I think more about the shape because they're both tart. Like malic acid and lactic acid, they're both tart, but it's just the shape-wise is a little different. Like malic acid feels much more pointy, jagged, and aggressive. Lactic acid, lactose, think yogurt, sour cream, is still tart, right? But the character of the wine, the shape of the acid is not as sharp and pointy. It's a little more rounded and a little bit softer. So yeah, malic to lactic acid. And then finally the oak. This is what we're talking about. It's a new oak, not neutral, which is what when we're talking about sherry, we're talking about like 150-plus-year-old American oak casks. There's no oak flavors left there. I mean, these are essentially vessels at that point. But when we say oak here, what we're talking about is really new oak. So when you put a new aged wine in a new oak, you get these these are like code words that we use to signal to each other that the wine has seen new oak, which are things like vanilla, cloves, nutmeg, coconut, toast, things like that, charred wood, so things like that. And then finally, tertiary is what happens when wine has been aged, so bottle aging. So here we're talking about deliberate oxidation. We know that there's some deliberate oxidation on this wine, right? Because it starts off as a floor aging without oxidant, but then it finishes 5 years under floor and then 7 years oxidative aging. So we know there's some deliberate oxidation, so we can expect to see some tertiary notes that come through. And then the fruit development here, the fruits kind of change from these fresh fruit to either dried or jammy or kind of raisined fruit, or it turns into something completely non-fruit, kind of savory thing. So here we got things like petrol. I know it sounds weird, but like Riesling, for example, really old aged Riesling will give us a petrol. It smells like a gas station, essentially, kerosene as you see it. So things like this, hay, honey, mushroom, and then with the red, these are kind of like if you ever gotten a really old bottles of like Bordeaux, these are oftentimes the kind of the tasting note vocabulary that you see: leather, phosphor, earthy, mushroomy, gamey, tobacco, things like that. So a lot of that fresh flowers that we talk a lot about in this primary will basically change into tertiary as the wine ages, gets some bottle aging. So that's what we're going to talk about. So Phil, we got condition, clean and sound. Intensity, we got medium plus to pronounced. and then aroma, medium plus to pronounce aromas of. What do you get in the primary? Oh, and one more thing before Phil, you get going. You see all this? So don't overthink it. Just go down the list. Just kind of, if you get any floral, call it out. If you don't, just move on to the next. Don't overthink this. It should be pretty quick. You should be able to get through. Like in the exam setting, you pretty much have like, I think it comes out to 3 minutes and 20 seconds, 3 minutes and 40 seconds or something per wine is essentially what you get to get through all this. So, I mean, these things happen quickly. So, don't overthink it. Sit there and like, do I smell apple? Do I smell gooseberry? Do I smell pear? Just kind of think through it. If any of these kind of resonate with you, then if you do, just call it out. If you don't, you don't. And one more thing I will say, all these vocabularies, all these descriptors that are here, if you look at it, a lot of it is pretty much, so WCT as well as a quartermaster sommelier, they were originally developed by the British. We talked a lot about influence of Brits in sherry, but they also have a huge influence in developing these criteria and tasting grids. So these are all fruits and vegetables that you will be very used to or familiar with if you grew up in, let's say, Western Europe, right? Or North America, or even Australia. But, there are parts of the world where, like if you come from Jamaica, if you come from Korea, like myself, if you grew up in Vietnam, if you grew up in Ghana, Senegal, if you grew up in different parts of the world with different climate and different fruit profile, and if you grew up in Brazil and grew up with all the tropical fruit that nobody knows what it is except for Brazilians, and if you were from Jamaica and then you grew up eating banana fruit, breadfruit, but nobody else knows what it is, it does not mean you're wrong if you smell those things. I have a sommelier friend in New York who says, it's not that this grid is wrong, but it's right, but right for whom? It's like it's right for Western Europeans, but just because you come from a different background and you smell other things does not mean that it is wrong. So if you get something that reminds you of something that you ate or you smelled as a child, call it out. It's totally perfectly fine. At the end of the day, this is your wine, this is what you smell, and your reference points of sensory memories is very different from everybody else. So I don't want you to think that this is very limiting in a way, is what I'm trying to say. Can be racist. So yeah, don't live and die by the grid. Just use it as a loose guideline to help you kind of taste through the wine. So anyways, enough of that. Enough talk. Phil, take us through. So
Okay,
primary.
you're gonna change your screen. You're still showing the, you haven't gone to the characteristics.
Oh, what? Really?
On the right.
Second page? No?
No, where do I see all the primary, secondary, and I don't.
Interesting. Here, let me just stop sharing and come back to it because it seems like it's.
There we go. Now it's up.
All right. Take us through the primary. So,
Okay, I get some flower. It's maybe a rose smell.
yeah, I guess I'm like, so they talk a lot.
Super sweet.
Yeah, this may be a power of suggestion, but manzanilla, particularly the La Gitana, their manzanilla that the Hidalgo makes, they're known for their chamomile. They say there's so much chamomile on their thing. Obviously, this is aged for much further than that, but I do think you're right. I do get a little bit of like a dry chamomile, dry kind of the little touch of floral kind of thing here.
Yeah.
All right, keep us going.
Green fruit, I don't get any green fruit.
Yeah, I don't get much green fruit.
Yeah. But I get a orange peel, maybe.
Yeah, I definitely get some orange peel there. Get a little bit of like a dry orange peel. Like a little bit of
a dry orange peel.
Tangerine orange peel, but dried. Yeah, for sure, not fresh. Yeah.
And then I get no stone fruit and no tropical.
Mm-hmm.
No red, of course, no black.
Yeah.
Maybe some fig or raisin.
Yeah. I get some like raisin character, dry character on this fruit. Yeah, exactly. Some raisiny, figgy kind of a thing for sure. Any herbaceous herbal?
No, I don't get any of that.
Yeah.
And I don't get any pungent smell either.
Yeah, I guess no spice. Any minerality here?
I don't get it. It's
Yeah.
secondary smells that I get.
Yeah, maybe I guess a little bit of like a crushed rock, like a rock dust a little bit. But yeah, like not hugely. All right. Any secondary?
Secondary, yeah, I do get a toast,
Yeah, there's a little bit of toast.
you know, a
Yep.
toasty smell. You know, not a cheese smell or not a sweet.
To me, okay, go ahead. Keep going.
And I get a real nutty flavor.
Yeah. So before we get to the oxidation, right here, to me, there's a touch of this kind of like cocoa nibs, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of a kind of the dark thing here.
Oh yeah, coffee for sure.
Yeah, a little bit like a coffee, cocoa nib kind of a thing going on, for sure. All right, let's get on to tertiary.
I got to see it. Can you look? I don't see I see only the secondaries.
What is happening? I'm scrolling down. Do you not see it?
No.
How about now?
I got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Almond for sure. Hazelnut.
Yeah.
Definitely hazelnut and almond.
Yeah.
I mean, and coffee, maybe even coffee.
Yeah, there's this kind of thing here from the oxidation. Maybe we're calling it coffee up here, but it's calling it down here as well.
Yeah.
There's definitely some coffee, coconut, to me, like that walnut, hazelnut. Yeah, some of that like walnut skin kind of a thing. If you ever open up like a bag of walnuts and I kind of smelled it, there's definitely some of that going on here. So yeah, definitely a sign of deliberate oxidation, which is, we know that this wine has some deliberate oxidation, so we know that for sure. Any other things like the fruit characters here?
Well, I did smell I thought it was fig, but I think it's more raisin. I don't see anything cooked here.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I get some raisins, some dried things coming out here. So yeah, excellent. And that's exactly what we're supposed to get. We know that there's a deliberate oxidation here. So we're getting some of dried fruits as well as this nut. This is, to me, is exactly the sign of where now the sign that you're entering Amontillado. So we did talk a little bit about that nuttiness last week with the manzanilla. And then I did say that this reminded me a little more of, is this closer to Amontillado than it is to a true phenol? Is because I was seeing some of the oxidation. And again, my guess is that those are the kind of casks that would have turned into Amontillado had they been making Amontillado. But if you remember that producer, they were just rescuing these different barrels from different producers. So I think they just released it as a phenol, as a single cask, as what they had. But there's definitely noticeably more of that kind of a nutty coffee. The character is getting darker. We had some like a little bit of almond last week. Marzipan was called. But now you're calling out chocolate, coffee, even some toffee. So like we're definitely getting some darker, more of a deliberate oxidation here. That's exactly where you're supposed to see going from manzanilla to Amontillado. So that's what I just want to point out. Cool, excellent. Good job, Phil. You get to pick the next person for the palette.
Any volunteers? Come on, this one's easy. Sarah, you want to do it? No?
We can we can do it. We were just talking about how this is not our favorite. We were like, oh, okay, I guess we can.
Excellent. Even more reason. I did want to point this out real quick. This development that it says here. So youthful is essentially, when you say this one is very youthful, it's essentially all the aromas and flavors that are coming out is pretty much all primary, that fruit and flower. Developing is when you're starting to see the kind of secondaries start to kick in a little bit. Some of the tertiary starting to peek through. fully developed is that when it hits that kind of like a perfect harmony of the freshness, some of the old kind of aged non-tertiary tertiary non-fruit flavors, all kind of commingling, harmoniously existing. And tired and past at its best is essentially when the primary has completely gone over to tertiary, secondary and tertiary. So there's no more kind of fresh fruit and nothing, nothing fresh. That's nothing primary that's left on the wine. So there's such thing as aged too long in the wine world. It's not just because not all wines. In fact, most wines are not meant to be aged for a long time. There's a misconception that people think that the longer the wine is aged, the better it is, but it's not necessarily true. Some wines are, but not all. In fact, the majority are not. Because this happens, because you lose all that freshness, all that primary. All right, cool. Let's get to the palate. Let me just go over this real quick, Sarah, and then I'll hand it over to you. So sweetness is what we're detecting is a sugar in the wine. So dry means the lack of sugar, sweet means presence of sugar, and this is the entire world of wine that's been produced, including the dry still wine, to sparkling wine, to fortified dessert wines and everything. So dry is, and unfortunately, WC doesn't put out like a very clear-cut distinction, like 0 to 10 grams per liter of sugar is dry, 11 to 20 is off dry,
You still
21 to 30 is
still have
medium
the
dry.
secondary and tertiary. Yeah,
Okay.
the wrong screen again.
How about now?
That's it.
Okay. I don't know what's happening. Interesting. Medium sweet is like 30 to 40. It's not as easy as that. So maybe a lot of perception. So like the acid plays a role when there's sugar and there's a whole lot of acid, the wine ends up tasting less sweet than it actually is. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. But in general, dry is about to like 0 to 9, 10 grams. Off dry, even up to like 15 sometimes, especially really high acid wines like a Riesling. Off dry is somewhere between like 15 to 20, 23. Medium dry, we're getting to 25, 35. Medium sweet, 35 and over, and all of that. Luscious sweet, I mean, like we're talking about like Tokai, which is up until like 500, 600 grams per liter. These are like syrupy sweet wines. So yeah, we are going through all of it. Just so you know, most of the wine, majority of wines made in the world are dry wines. Most don't have any sugar in it. So when in doubt, call dry. In American palate, we like to call like even cabinet level Riesling from Mosel, Germany as sweet, because we know it's sweet, but that's like off dry. Just starting to see a little bit of sugar is basically off dry. So by the time we call something sweet in the wine world, it's getting into really, really high levels of sugar. So in case, when in doubt, pretty much call dry. Especially majority of wines we feature here, 6 wine focus pretty dry. All right. Having said that, Sarah, Andrew, give us the sweetness score. So give it a sip and then swirl it all around the mouth. And then just detect for sugar.
I think it's dry.
There's wine in blow dry. There's no
I
sugar
want
on
it to be sweet, but it's not.
You're a cream sherry person, huh? Their cream sherry is delicious. Yeah, this one is bone dry. There's no sugar on this whatsoever. Let's get to acidity. Acidity, take a sip. Listerine the shit out of your mouth, essentially coat every inch of your mouth, and then watch for where you feel acid. This is a sensation. Some people feel it in different places. Most people, I think, feel it behind their jaw. Some people feel it in their sinus. I feel it behind my jaw. I know some people who feel it like between their eyebrows. But you got to figure out where you feel acid, and then you are gonna calibrate your senses to help you calibrate senses to get there. So acid. Sarah, where are we?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it burns a little bit, and I can't tell if that's the alcohol or the acid. I feel like it doesn't get my like it doesn't make me like, if that salivate, yeah, like get my salivary glands like hurting, but like it feels kind of acidic.
Yeah, there's definitely good acid on here. The That's another thing that Sarah said, the salivary gland. So when the higher the acid, it will make your mouth water more. So that's another thing you can look out for. But to help you calibrate sense, and sometimes, especially with the bone dry wines, acid is much easier to detect, but wine gets sweeter, wine gets really fat and high in alcohol. It's sometimes hard to tell acid. It gets harder to tell acid. But to help you calibrate senses, this is like right in medium plus. I won't call this this is somewhere between like medium plus. I'm leaning more towards the medium plus right now. But it's a decent amount of acid. There's some wines obviously with even more screaming acid, but this is a good acid for a good amount of acid for sure. I'm gonna call this medium plus. Tannin. So tannin is a polyphenolic compound that's found in the skins, the seeds, and the stems of the grapes. If you ever want to feel what tannin feels like, if you oversteep like 2 bags of green tea and then you drink that tea or you suck on that tea bag, you'll feel this kind of compound that coats your mouth, gives you a little friction, gives you a drying sensation in your mouth. That's tannin. Or if you ever like chewed on like apple skins, almost all fruit skins of the fruit has some level of tannin. Again, gives you this kind of mouth drying sensation that comes in, some friction. That's what it comes from. With white wine, you're rarely ever going to have to talk about tannin because you take the juice right off the skin. It doesn't spend any time on the skins, and it's the same thing with the sherry. This is, I mean, you saw it in the video. As soon as the grapes come into the cellar, they crush it and separate off the skin, take it off the skin. So we're not going to have any. I mean, you could make an argument spending that much time in wood and cask, it could have some wood tannin, but in all intents and purposes, we're not really talking about wood tannin here. So let's not talk about tannin here. This is irrelevant in discussion of sherry. Like nobody's talking about, ooh, like look at the tannin at sherry, because that's not what we're really talking about. So if you do get a little bit of grape, it's definitely the wood tannin coming from the cask, not from the actual fruit, the seeds and the stems and all of that. Alcohol. So alcohol, take a sip or spit it out, and you're gonna watch for the warmth in the back of your throat. Usually you feel it like in your throat, in your neck, in the back, and then you're just gonna try to get in a habit of guessing the alcohol percentage of wine that you drink from now on, so you can help yourself kind of calibrate. So take a sip. This is a game that I play all the time. Like I take a sip and then kind of think about it, and then I guess my percentage and then look at the label to see what it is. So, all right, alcohol. Oh, by the way, the here low is kind of like, so medium is 12.5, 12 to 13.5%. Medium plus is 13.5 to 14.5. High is 15 and plus. Medium minus is like, I don't know, 10.5 to 11.5. Low is 10 and below. That's for regular dry still wine. For fortified wines, low is like 15%, 15.5, 16. Medium is like 17.5, 18.5. Highs, and we're talking about like 19.5 to 20 going on. So fortified wine is a little bit different. So 15 would be considered low in fortified wine world, because anything under 15, you don't necessarily have to fortify it, because the yeast itself will take the wine up to that percentage. Anyway. All right, let's talk about alcohol. Guess.
Medium. So like, I guess, what does that make it, like 17 or something?
Yeah, exactly. So this one should be at least 17.5, because that's legally what is required. 17.5 on the dot is exactly what this one is. So this would be medium. And again, last week was 14.5, right? Was it 15? 15.5? I think it was 14. I think it was 15. And then this week we're at 17.5. is because this hasn't been fortified higher to kill off the floor, because the floor can't survive beyond like 15.5, 16%. So that's why. So help your senses. This is what 17.5, this amount of work that you feel with this wine is what 17.5 feels like in your body. So help you calibrate your senses. Body. So take a sip, move it around all your mouth, and what you're looking for, don't pay attention to the flavor, don't pay attention to the structure. Only thing you're looking for is the weight, the viscosity. How much weight does this beverage have in moving around? And this is where I split the room with the wine club. Some people are team milk, some people are not. I use the analogy of milk to describe it. If you've never switched around different fat percentage milks in your mouth, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Maybe you should try that sometime. But medium is essentially 2% milk, medium plus, full is like a whole milk, medium minus 1% milk, light is like a skim milk. It's essentially water. It's basically what we're talking about when it comes to body. So give this a swish and see what's the body. So,
it's got some weight to it.
At least medium.
Yeah, at least medium, maybe medium plus.
Agreed. Basically, anytime, and this is part of why I think this is Legs and Tears is so stupid to talk about. This is what we're talking about. We just verify the sweet and alcohol, and as a result of that, alcohol we call it medium, 17.5%. Anytime there's that much alcohol, because the glycol that's in the wine, it's gonna have some body. All the sugar that's been converted into alcohol, like in order for this to get to 17.5, it had to first start with sugar. Yes, this fortified, there's some grain that's added to it, but that also had to start with some sugar at some point. So there's definitely some glycol here, and then it adds to the body. So anything that's 17.5, there's no way you're gonna find light to medium body. So I'm totally agreeing with your call. I'm gonna go with the medium plus on this thing as well. Mousse, we don't have to talk about it today, but this is for sparkling wine. This is basically how aggressive the bubbles feel. Delicate is like, obviously just a little prickly, creamy, aggressive. This is my least favorite of the category, or what I think is the most inadequate, most half-ass way of describing the bubbles. I feel like there's so many more ways to kind of dissect the bubbles and aggressiveness in the mousse, but these are what we're given: delicate, creamy, and aggressive. We'll talk more about that when we get to sparkling wine. Okay, flavor intensity. This is how intensely flavor the wine diet. Sarah, Andrew, how intense is this one?
I think it's pretty aggressive, like not aggressive, but like medium plus.
Agreed. Just like the nose intensity on the nose, I'm going to call this a medium plus to pronounce. Whether you like this wine or not, whether you prefer this wine or not, cannot argue with the intensity of this wine. Everything that's in here is very, very expressive, right? You may not like the flavors, but this is very intense that's in there. So I'm going to call this a medium plus, bordering on pronounced. It's somewhere between medium plus and pronounced. All right. Now, this is where you go. The flavor characteristic. This is where you go, and then you verify everything that you smell, and then see if there's anything else that pops up. So, Sarah and Andrew, do you agree with everything that Phil called out? Is there anything else that sticks out to you?
I don't get a whole lot with this, and I know that means I probably just don't care for sherry, because I want it to be port, I think. It's just kind of like disappointing.
You don't have to like the wine.
I know, but I'm trying to think of like what it tastes like, and I'm not coming up with anything, because to me it's like flat or something. Like, I know Andrew's saying I'm weird.
Tastes very like nutty and raisiny is what I taste.
Nutty and raisiny.
Flavors.
Yeah, I mean, those are
flavor and a raisin flavor.
Yeah, I mean, those are excellent call, right? Basically what you're getting at is the fruit quality is dry, right?
Yeah.
Raisin, dry, and then there's noticeable nuttiness, right? Which is the opposite. So
I like both of those things, and
Yeah.
I don't get any of it.
That's what we're drinking. We're drinking the same fucking wine.
I know.
That's interesting. You don't get any nut here. Like to me, it's so nutty
Yes, you
here.
do.
Like the almond.
I
and
do on the
then
nose, not on the palate.
Okay.
No, definitely taste
It's
that.
on the back end of the palate. Have a sip
Okay.
and then kind of sit with it, and then like as it comes at the end after all that. But
I don't know. I get it immediately. I get the nuttiness like the second
Yeah,
I
I
taste
mean,
it too.
it's
Same.
not-
So
it's not.
Yeah, like-
It's not. So to me, this wine, what it is. So first of all, let's go over what Phil said, which is that he first called out a little bit of floral, a little bit of dry kind of citrus fruit kind of thing. I totally agree. I get all that. None of this stone fruit, tropical red, black. Character of the fruit is all dried. The reason we talk about the character of fruit, this says a lot about what happened in that vintage in terms of farming, how hot it was, how cold it was. It gives you kind of a sense of what happened. But to me, there's a lot of dried. When it comes down to fruit, the primary fruit, this is all dried. Herbaceous, I'm not calling it here, but there's something herbaceous here that I get more on the palate than I got a little bit on the nose as well, but I'm definitely getting it on the palate. I don't want to call menthol here, but there's something tobacco-y that's going on here that I get a little bit in this wine, which is that is layered to all the other typical kind of a nutty dry fruit kind of thing that I get. The chalky kind of minerality, the crushed rock kind of thing comes through. All here. I mean, this there's some of that kind of like the coffee, but this is really the more of the oxidation part. So to Andrew's point and everything that Phil said, we're talking about marzipan, the almond, the walnut, hazelnut. I get a little bit of this coffee, cocoa nibs. To me, like it gets back to that like a, you know, the not the chocolate, but the actual cocoa nibs is what I get. Again, the raisin, dried fruit, all signs of aging, and then a little bit of a tobacco, but like really nutty. There's something even like mushroomy kind of going on here, something savory here that's going on just beyond the just the fruit and the flower. So and on the palate, what I'm also getting here, knowing that this started as a Manzanilla, not a Pinot, head of Pinot, is that what Manzanilla is known for is that kind of salty tang. There's definitely some brininess here. There's some
Yeah, that I
saltiness
get
here.
a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which you can't get on the, you can't smell salt. You can only, I mean, you can smell like sea breeze and things like that, but it's salt, it can only be tasted. But to me, there's a lot of solidity, like saltiness running through here. And part of the reason why this is like so good with as a top-up pairing, like a lot of like olives and nuts and cheese and things like that, is that because that's salty and the tanginess. So yeah, I'm actually very surprised that Sarah, and like I know you're a pretty sharp taster. The fact that you don't get anything is very surprising to me.
Yeah, it smelled like I can smell all these things that Phil called out, and it's like almost like caramelly kind of. And then on
absolutely.
the palate, I'm like, it just tastes like acid and salt to me.
still make it.
Yeah, no,
I mean-
it's definitely tangy. It's definitely salty. Yeah, it's weird to think about. There's definitely like, imagine caramel toffee that is not sweet.
But
right?
that sounds delicious to me, and I don't like. I don't know what's wrong with me.
You would only like it if it's sweet, though. I think.
I don't
Do that
know.
stuff.
Maybe I don't know.
Maybe your palate has a biological sherry block. I don't know.
Yeah,
Who knows?
I don't like
all right,
cilantro
well-
either. So there you go.
Well, let's get to the finish. How long is the length of this one?
It's pretty long. Medium plus.
This wine's length is crazy long.
You think
Like,
longer than medium plus?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
If more than anything, this is
Yeah.
like squarely in the long. This is
Okay.
I mean, like to me, that nuttiness is still going on. Yeah, I'm still tasting it. Like I remember as I was talking earlier after taking a sip, like I was like, oh my God, it's still going. all of their wines. One thing that I remember walking with, because I tasted all of them, the Manzanilla, Amontillado, and Oloroso, and even cream sherry as well. Actually, on Case Club, Sarah, if you remember, I'll put some cream sherry on there. You should definitely check out some cream sherry. I think you would be.
What even is that?
So cream sherry is
Not to derail
essentially-
us, but
So pale cream sherry is you take phenol and then you take unfermented must, but sterilized, so the yeast has been taken out. Or they cook it down, so they turn it arope. They basically turn it into syrup, and then they add some of that back into the wine to sweeten it, and that's called cream sherry. So if the base is phenol sherry, it's pale cream sherry. If the base is oloroso sherry, which is what we're tasting next week, it is called just cream sherry. So those are the two differences. So it's basically what we're tasting today with the actual grape must added back in with the sugar.
okay.
The natural sugar of the grape. It's delicious, especially dairy cream sherry. It's delicious. Not all cream sherries are delicious because some of them they just add like caramel coloring and regular table sugar, but they do it the right way. So they add the actual Pedro Jimenez grapes and then the natural sugar from that added into it. So delicious stuff. So anyways, so long finish. The basic finish is how long the finish lasts, and we'll talk more about it as time goes along. You'll get it, but to calibrate extensive, this is basically in the long. I mean, this length of this thing is crazy. All right, conclusion. You're going to put it all together, and you're going to call quality level how long the wine ages. So the quality level is a function of four things. It's balance, intensity, complexity, and length. So let's go through each one of them. Balance. Sarah Andrew, what do you call it? Is this wine balanced?
Yes.
Yes, I think this wine is very well balanced. There's nothing here that's stopping you from tasting all the other things. It's so strong, this interfering with other things. I think this wine is very well balanced. Intensity.
It's
What do you call
intense.
it?
Very intense. Yeah.
Called it medium plus the pronounce on the nose. Medium plus pronounce is, it's very intense, expressive, intense. So medium plus the pronounced intensity. Complexity. How many different things are we smelling and tasting? Well, I think we're going to get two different answers. Whether
I know. I was like, if you listen to me,
Pretty complex.
Yeah, I think.
Honestly, it's
I
pretty
think.
complex.
Yes, I think others believe, or others believe. That makes me sound like I'm doubting them. Others would say that it is very complex.
Right? We're talking about primary, secondary, tertiary, even within primary, secondary, tertiary, each one of those categories, there's multiple things going on. There's a lot of different things that are happening in this wine. So that's it. This is very, very complex. And this is what happens with sherry. When you've had wines that have been aging for decades, being blended, fractionally blended into the wine, and also and then you add the oxidative aging on top of it. This is why sherry, you get just so much complexity and quality for the per dollar that you get. And then finally, the length. What do we call it?
Long.
Yeah, long. So when you take an average of all of that, it's balance, medium plus to pronounced intensity, extremely complex, and long finish. When you take an average of all of that, we're ending in all pronounced, long.
Outstanding.
Yeah, we're going to call this outstanding. Now, level of readiness for drinking or potential for aging. Would you age this one?
I don't know that much about aging sherry. So I don't know, but it has a good acid. It's got a lot of acid, and I guess there's not tannin, so we don't talk about that. But I guess you could.
Yeah. Thank you for actually. I forgot to explain. So in order for wines to age, you got to have two things. You got to have the structural component and you got to have flavor component. In each one of those components subdivides further into two subcomponents. So the structural component, what we're talking about is tannin and or acid. The wine has to have a high tannin or high acid. It's basically served as a strong backbone for all these flavors to stick to so it doesn't fall apart. So this wine has a decent acid, right? Medium plus acid. So decent backbone, no tannin, but yeah, decent backbone. And then finally, the fruit part is the intensity and the complexity. How intense is the wine? This is pronounced that a lot of things happening. But there's already tertiary things that are happening, and this is already very harmonic. We have some primary going on, secondary, tertiary. As the wine ages more, everything's going towards more tertiary. With sherry, it's essentially you don't necessarily need to age it much longer because it's already been aged and it's being released when it's kind of ready and it's already been aged and the wines from decades ago are already added. I don't think these wines are going to fall apart anytime soon, given that one, has a medium plus acid like Sarah was talking about, but this is also oloroso, meaning this has already seen oxidative aging. It's already pretty oxidized, which means it's not going to further oxidize, adding that nutty kind of character that you would want in an aged wine. It's already aged like that. So with sherry in general, I won't worry about aging it. It's just already kind of aged perfectly where it is. It's like a cocktail that's already coming out to you. This is like, to me, sherry is essentially a wine cocktail. So everything that you want is already made and blended into a glass and given to you. So I won't worry about talking about aging further, bottle aging with the sherry. I feel like it's a little silly thing, especially with the oloroso. But yeah, so I would say drink this now, and then this will be fine. It's not gonna fall apart anytime soon. This is pretty much 7 years of oxidative aging already, so it's not gonna get. It may get a little bit more oxidative, but it's pretty much fully oxidized at this point. So I'd say go ahead and drink it. It's pretty much indestructible. But yeah. And that's why I also love Amontillado and Oloroso sherry, because it's like you can't destroy it. It's already kind of a fully cooked and destroyed. So there you go. All right.
So how long can we keep this in the fridge?
This is gonna go on for a long time. You can keep it in the fridge pretty much indefinitely at this point. It may get a little more oxidative and a little nutty, but it's anything that's fully oxidatively aged like this, like next week's wine, Oloroso is indestructible. So keep it in there, drink it for a long time. All right, that was a long session, but just wanted to get through that. Thanks for sticking with me. Any questions about any of that? Yeah? Did you guys like the wine?
Sarah didn't.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, Sarah and Andrew did.
I just talked over Sarah, but I was gonna say I actually like this one a lot better than last week's.
Yeah.
So
I also like this one better than last week.
I also liked this one better than last week's.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
I think it's fine. I don't think it's the best thing we've ever drank, but I think it's totally fine. I don't dislike it as much as you.
Yeah, I agree with this. I don't like hate it. It's just not what I would like, pull out.
I mean, these kind of wines are particularly for most Americans. It's like we don't have a reference. Like we don't drink oxidized wines. So unless we come to Madeira or we come to sherry, it's like our first foray into oxidized wine. Unless you have a wine at your grandma's house that's been on her fucking shelf for 2 years. Like that's the whole thing, whole different. But so it's very, very new and weird. And to me, again, I've said this at the beginning of the month. If you don't enjoy these wines, I highly recommend having a little piece of food. Like food makes so much difference with these wines. Yeah, I mean, what turned me on to sherry was really being in Spain and then drinking it with all the different kind of tapas and different food pairings that come with it. And then it's like, oh my God, this all makes sense now. Like I understand why the food is the way it is, the wine is the way it is, and why they work. Yeah, it's like a lesson in pairing. So you're not. Sorry, what was that, Lisa?
We love sherry. It almost reminds me of sake, where it's like both with the umami backbone and then also the
Absolutely.
the need to have it with food. But just kind of sipping something savory and umami.
Absolutely.
Yeah. but you know I love sherry, so
Yeah, I mean, I said this last week, but my mom talks about sherry every time she takes sherry, especially these Oloroso sherries. So also sherry, she
yeah.
always exclaims,
I
soy
thought that was
sauce.
so funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's the umami thing again. I mean, again, talking about the grid, it doesn't have umami on the grid, but like there's so much of that going on here. So,
Lisa, I said that too. I think you dropped, but last week I was like, this really reads more like a sake to me than like
yeah,
wine.
That's funny. Yeah.
And like, I don't know, this one I feel like I'm really tasting like the brandy. I don't know. I'm almost like struggling to contextualize these on like these scales where I'm like, I don't know. They're not reading
yeah.
as much
Well,
as other wines to me.
wait until next week, and then you will kind of see where this all kind of ties in. Because next week is basically we've skipped the entire floor aging. Now we're going strictly to oxidative aging from the beginning to the end. And you will see how much darker, how many like deep base notes, that caramel, toffee, all that notes really come out, how nutty one the wine can get. So I thought about putting it that way initially, where I was going to do manzanilla or Oloroso, then do Amontillado for programming, but I just wanted to decide to do a more gradual kind of a approach. So maybe I should have done it the other way to have this make a little more sense. But anyways, go. Let's play everybody's favorite game. How much do you think this wine is on a retail shelf? How much would you be happy paying for this on the retail shelf? Remember, this is one of the oldest wineries in Spain, one of the most well-respected sherry producers. I mean, it says also on the bottle, 92 points for what it's worth, and it's 500 milliliters. How much do you think this wine would be? 30, 40. Lisa, how much do you think this is?
I was gonna say the 30 range too.
All right. Well, you guys are a little miss off the mark, but this on the retail shelf will be $22.49.
Dang, we have cheap taste.
This is what I'm talking about.
I love cheap taste.
I mean, given it's 500 milliliters, so at 750, this should be like 33.74. It was a full 750 milliliters. But what bottles at 22.49 or even at 33.74 do you know that you can get that is decades old, this complex, this aged, ready to go out of the bottle to drink? What other wine do you know that can do that? This is why sherry, they're like sherry addicts out there. People just lose their goddamn mind with sherry. So yeah, this bottle on the retail shelf will be $22.49.
I'm surprised it's cheaper than last week, honestly. That's why I went with 40, because I was like, it's got to be more expensive, right? I didn't like that much.
I mean, it's also less of wine. I mean, less wine. It's a 500, milliliters. But yeah, $22.49, $22.50 would be retail. That's insane. Like to me, that is insane. Yeah, if you ever wanted a lesson in like a aged white wine, like this is what you have here. And it costs less than 25 bucks. Can't argue with that. All right. Any questions? Any other questions? Cool. Hearing none. I'm gonna stop.